Trump doesn't realize every day that he tries to hide these files or call it a hoax, it makes him look even more guilty. There's a clip that's resurfacing from 4 months ago where Don Lemon interviewed the brother of Jeffrey Epstein, Mark Epstein, and Mark names who he believes had something to do with his brother's death. And trust me, we're not shocked at all. And he did not blame Bill Clinton nor a Democrat. Let's get into it, y'all. Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. I was happy that I seen this clip resurface because a lot of people were under the impression that Jeffrey Epstein was locked up during the Biden administration. No. It was the Trump administration. Let's get into it, y'all. Here we go.
When you saw that interview with them, I think there was a couple of interviews. The one thing with Maria Bartiromo, where they sat down, and I mean, they were glum, and they're saying there's nothing there. I would be honest with you, there's nothing there. After years and years of pushing, and also calling this somehow a Democrat, according to them, conspiracy theory, and that somehow the Democrats were involved in your brother's death.
I don't think the Democrats. Look, well, I look at it this way. Bill Barr, when he came out with that ridiculous statement, he was the Attorney General. You know, who did he look? If Jeffrey was murdered, which I believe he was, somebody did it. So the people who are coming out with these ridiculous statements, I think, are covering up for somebody, right? Mm-hmm. So who are they covering up for? You know, Bill Barr worked for the President of the United States. Kash Patel works for the President of the United States. Pam Bondi works for the President of the United States. Maybe someone should ask him what he knows.
Who do you think they're covering up for?
Who do they all work for?
They all work for Donald Trump.
Well, like I said in another interview, I wouldn't be surprised.
You wouldn't be surprised if Donald Trump was behind your brother's death? Are you saying that Donald Trump had your brother murdered, you believe?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying if that's what it was, I wouldn't be surprised. We know that Jeffrey had dirt on Donald Trump. We know that. That's a fact. Because he said in 2016 with the election that if he said what he knew, they'd have to cancel the election. He didn't tell me what he knew, but that's what he said. And I've been public about that before. That shouldn't come as a shock.
Dirt like what? Dirt about what?
Of course, Steve Bannon said that the only person he feared for Donald Trump's sake was Jeffrey Epstein. Why? What do you think? Jeffrey was going to beat him up? No, it's because of what Jeffrey knew.
And what did Jeffrey know?
Well, I don't know. He didn't tell me what he knew, but he said if he said what he knew, they'd have to cancel the election. That's a direct quote. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you believe your brother had dirt on Donald Trump. I'm trying to figure out dirt like what?
Well, I don't know. He didn't tell me, but I do know they used to be very friendly back in the 90s, into maybe early 2000s. Yeah, they used to fly in each other's planes. And yeah, Donald Trump was in Jeffrey's office a lot in the early 90s when he was in financial trouble. Yeah, they were good friends. Jeffrey used to tell me that he liked hanging out with him in the early days. Trump was a funny guy, you know, so they were good friends. I only saw them both together once when I flew up from Florida with them on Jeffrey's plane once. So I don't have a lot of experience with them, with other people around, but they were good friends.
So, but Mark, let's be honest about this, all right? Because we're all adults here. When you say dirt, it would have to do with something that has to do with, you know, either trafficking or SA, as we call it, assault, and young people, young girls. That's the accusations.
Listen, Mark's not trying to implicate himself, but I do believe him when he says this because, again, he would know his brother best. And knowing how now we know Jeffrey Epstein was helping during that hearing in Congress with Stacey Plaskett and was giving her questions to ask Michael Cohen. Yeah, he was coming for Trump. He was coming for Trump, and Trump was worried. So what I was just thinking, you guys, Bill Barr was the attorney general in the first Trump administration. Bill Barr's father worked with Jeffrey Epstein, so that's their connection. Steve Bannon, remember he mentioned that Steve Bannon had feared Jeffrey Epstein and what he knew? Well, Steve Bannon had did a documentary on Jeffrey Epstein, but he never released it. He followed Jeffrey Epstein around, interviewed him, was going to do this documentary, and then never released it. And nobody talks about Steve Bannon in that documentary that he was supposed to put out. Like, what happened? Did he edit it? Like, what's going on? Let's see that footage. That needs to be subpoenaed. And then, granted, everybody that Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, they all work for Trump. So, of course, they're going to say, oh, there's nothing to see here. This is all a big cover-up. And let's not forget, Trump said, well, it was reported in his first administration that he thought about giving Ghislaine a pardon. This was before she, today in the second Trump administration. This was during the first. He wanted to give her a pardon, and they suggested don't do that. Fast forward to now, she's moved into this low security camp. It's not a jail. It's basically like a camp, and she's given special treatment. Why is a predator given special treatment? And obviously, she lied that, oh, Trump wasn't at the house. He didn't do this. He didn't do that. Because in the emails, we seen that Trump was with a victim, for 16 hours, and then a few other things where it drew Trump and Ghislaine a connection together where they were at the house. So again, everything points back to Trump. Why doesn't he want these files released? Well, now today he said, yeah, Democrats should vote for it. But like I said before, that's actually a trick. The trick is he opened up investigations into Bill Clinton and all these other Democrats, right? But if you have an open investigation, you cannot release the files. They're going to try to tie this all up in the courts to where, oh, we're doing active investigation, so sorry, we can't release any of the files. This is all a trick. And let's be honest, from what Mark Epstein is saying, whatever information he had on them, they would have to cancel the election. It's bad. It's definitely bad. Let's continue.
Do you believe that?
That's a possibility. It could also mean stuff in the business realm. Like I said, I don't know. Jeffrey didn't tell me. And as I've been saying for almost 6 years, I don't like to speculate. I like to stick with facts.
Mm-hmm. And you said it could be something in the business realm, or it could be something to do with that, right?
Well, it could be anything. I don't know what it is, so I'm not going to start listing possibilities. That's not my job.
But that's a lot to say that you are, that this person. Well, I mean, Jeffrey Epstein, your brother, did die, or as you say, was murdered. That's according to you. He did die when Donald Trump was president.
Correct.
And there will, and somehow this became Joe Biden's fault.
Yeah, I have no idea.
I'm not sure how that became Joe Biden's fault when it happened under Donald Trump when he died. And somehow it became Joe Biden's fault. And now they have released the papers, and they're saying the papers were at the Southern District of New York, and I've got all this stuff, and there's a lot of dirt and whatever. And then all of a sudden there's nothing. And now you have the deputy head of the FBI saying, I may resign because the Attorney General of the United States is not releasing all the information that he believes is pertinent. That's pretty big, Mark. Come on.
I believe it is pretty big, but that's not what I'm interested in. That's the case. That's, look, nothing's going to bring my brother back. So I'm not worried, looking at that possibility. And the stuff about the case and what the intricacies of the government actions is not what I'm concerned about for my brother's sake, because that's what I'm concerned about is the circumstances of what I believe to be is murder. Look, it was also, Jeffrey had a hearing coming up for his bail in a few days after he died. Now, knowing my brother as I did, I would imagine he wouldn't kill himself before the bail hearing, because if he got bail, he'd be out of jail. He'd be living in his house with an ankle monitor, with armed guards, with cameras. but he wouldn't be in jail, awaiting trial. I could see if he went for the bail hearing and it was denied, and then he figured he had to spend another year in jail waiting for a trial. I could see him, taking himself out. Like I said, when I first heard that he was found dead from an apparent suicide, I had no reason to doubt that. But the next day when they did the autopsy, and both professional, experienced pathologists came out of the room and said they couldn't call it a suicide because it looks too much like a homicide. That's on the initial death certificate. It's when it said cause of death, it said pending further study. And then a few days later, the chief medical examiner, Dr. Barbara Sampson, who never saw the body, Jeffrey was removed from the place before she ever showed up. She declares it a suicide without giving any explanation of what further study was done to make her come to that conclusion. Again, this doesn't pass the laugh test as far as I'm concerned. There's just so much of this, and there's so much like what you might call, circumstantial evidence. But it's like the story, like if you leave your house in the morning and the streets are wet with puddles and all the cars are wet and there's water dripping from the trees, but it's not raining, you could safely assume that it was raining before you came out. You didn't see it rain, but you know it was raining. It's the same thing here. You can't have, it's just looking too much like he was murdered. I don't know. I can't say who did it.
And listen, Mark is going to defend his brother and obviously want justice for him. However, I want to be clear. Jeffrey Epstein was a bad guy. I'm not excusing anything that he did wrong, right? I ain't pulling a Megyn Kelly. But what I'm saying is that it's very interesting how this man was going to have a hearing. And so he was probably going to be able to get bail and go home or whatnot. So why would he end his life just randomly? And like he said, it would be one thing if they told him, oh, you got to wait another year, or he wasn't going to get bond. More than likely, he would have got bailed out and went back home and then awaited his trial. Ghislaine, she hasn't tried to, end her life from what we know. So why would Jeffrey Epstein? It's just very strange. It's very strange. And again, that whole connection with Trump and knowing that this happened during his administration, you can't help but to think. And then again, like I said in the beginning of the video, the way Trump acts, like, okay, something is wrong, obviously.
I wasn't there, but it certainly doesn't look like a suicide.
Do you think there are too many weird coincidences of cameras going out and the video not working and, things that are being redacted? And then all of a sudden, Donald Trump doesn't want to talk about it when questioned about it at a press conference.
In a minute cut out
why
of
not?
the video.
You would think the president of the United States would want the truth to come out instead of squashing it all.
Go on.
You would think that if he wasn't involved.
Say again?
I said, I would certainly think the president of the United States would want the truth to come out unless he was involved.
What would you say to him?
Well, I'd ask him to provide the answers to the questions we've been asking. And then, that would help a lot. And then to come to some kind of determination after that. Like I said, I don't want to speculate. I like to work on facts. And I would like to get the answers to the very simple questions that we've been stymied on.
Like?
Well, like who were the prisoners on the tier? When did they get there? And where are they now? Because we were told that a number of the prisoners were transferred off of that tier after the death. So let's say somebody was put in the prison in there a few days before as an inmate, but his real job there, some kind of covert operation to take Jeffrey out. And then he gets transferred out and he disappears into the ether. So that's why I want to know who were the prisoners on that tier. Like I said, it's not a huge number. It's a maximum of 14, and I think it was more like 12. Who were they? When did they get there? And where are they now? Now we know that other inmate, Nicholas Taglioni, was there, and he was there for a long time. So he certainly wasn't planted there knowing that Jeffrey would be there to kill him. So we can sort of scratch him off the list of someone who might have been planted there. So now we're down to 11 people. And there was another guy that was Jeffrey's roommate for a while, a cellmate for a while, and he has since passed away from natural causes. So now we're down to what, 10 people, somewhere around there. So who?
I want to say, I've heard about the conspiracies about Jeffrey Epstein death. A lot of people don't think he unalived himself. They think that someone did it. And I never really paid attention to it. But when I seen this clip resurfacing, I was all like, wow, he's really connecting some dots here and calling out some things that does not make sense at all. So very intrigued. Please, go ahead and please let me know. I would love to hear what you guys have to say.
Are they? When did they get there? And where are they now? The Bureau of Prisons should have records of this readily available.
How is your family doing, especially and you specifically, because
so I'm going to go ahead and end it right here. Shout out to Don Lemon for getting that interview. But like I said, I found it intriguing that he was all like, well, who was president around that time? Who do they work for? Why would they have something to hide? That's what we're all saying. So definitely, you guys, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. And like I said before, let me know what you think in the comment section. This is crazy. I happened to stumble across this on Twitter and I was like, oh, I got to share this with y'all. All right, everybody, we out of here. Deuces.